I'm going to show some stuff that I actually used to show years ago whenever I had a chance, like teaching chess or something. I'm going to show one of my games that I played in 2001, a long time ago. And I'm going to show this some studies, or Études as they're called. So first of all, these are just for fun, and we're going to kind of run through them pretty quickly, but then I'll show you this game, because I haven't shown any of my games since I've been here, so I figure, okay, I get my chance to show one game that I won. But okay, this is a study by someone named Kazantsev, and it's white to play. So this one is a little hard of a hard solution to find, but it's really amazing. So to start off with, black is up a queen for rook and knight, let's say. Rook and knight, right? But white has something going for him. Do you see any way to make use of this one factor, which at the moment is worth something? Any ideas?
Black's king is corner.
Kind of, yeah. But besides that,
I like the pawn on 6.
pawn on, yeah, e6, we can use that, right? So maybe push it.
No, because then he's got to check.
Got to check on a3. Well, okay, that's what white should do. I mean, this one's hard to solve, so you push the pawn. He checks. So white doesn't have to lose the pawn though yet, right? What could he do? Block with the rook, right? Okay, black still, he needs to take that pawn, or otherwise it's going to queen. Check. Okay, takes the pawn. Black better take the pawn, right? And now suddenly, got all these pieces here on the 4th rank, all lined up. And white's, I'm just going to show you the solution to this, because it's kind of silly for me to just ask people for advice here. Start off with this move. Forking the king and the queen, right? Black better take the knight, yeah? We do it again. Forking the king and the queen. Has to take it. So we got rid of those two pieces. We didn't need them. They were in the way. And now we check here. Discovered check with the king. And black's only way out of check that doesn't lose the queen and everything else is this. If he goes bishop f4, then I suppose white takes, right? Black has to take. If he goes king here, then this, and then we take the queen, right? That would chase the king away from the queen, and so he has to take. And white takes back. And here we have king and pawn ending, but who's winning here? I mean, white's winning, right? And black can't, his king is badly placed too. 3 pawns against 2 is going to be a win anyway, but there's nothing black can do. He's got 2 legal moves, g5 and king g4. If it goes g5, then f5. We promote the pawn. If it goes king g4, then we got king e5, and still nothing's happening. Black's going to run out of moves soon. For instance, here, 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 you know, here, so on. Eventually, we take this pawn. So that's not going to help black. So the only thing he can do is king g5, right? Now, what do you think white does? h4, okay. King here. King has no moves. Does anyone see that it's made in 3 moves? This is involving blocking flight squares. Opposition is more for king and pawn endings, not so much. But it does help us to control some squares that the black king is. Yeah. So. Rook where?
Rook to b1 and then go to e1.
Yeah, but black has a chance to say something too. Then and then he goes queen e5 and then.
Okay.
Yeah, or whatever. e4. E4. Then black could go here. e5, okay. Good idea. Get the queen back, but at the cost of black remains up a bishop. So that's not quite it. Any other ideas? We got to forcing moves, obviously. That's what makes it a lot easier to solve this position, because you're down a queen, plus black has a whole bunch of checks. So there's really no question of making any quiet moves here. We've got to just look at checks. Rook b1 doesn't work because it's too quiet. Rook f4, okay, we're starting to get there. Okay, black has to take it, right? G4, but the king takes. Right? Not pawn takes, though. What would happen if pawn takes? E4. So now does that give us an idea? From this position, rook f4 doesn't work because bishop takes, g4, king takes. G4 first has to take it, right? With a pawn. And now rook f4 and then e4. Okay. So that's this study. Now let's see this one. This is funny, okay? It's white to move. What's white, what's going on here?
Bishop d7.
Yeah, but what about this pawn, though? Bishop g7, okay. Let's see. So I go here. If he takes the rook, I just make a queen, right? And then white's not going to be able to do much. So right now, black's up the exchange. And he has this pawn on f3. But white's got some pawns, and black's very cramped over there with the king and the rook. So what do you think white could do? Any other candidate moves here?
Bishop c5.
Okay, bishop c5 stops the pawn. And now black is going to take here, though, right? And it's only white fighting to hold, but it's not even probably going to be a hold, right? Because black's about to start pushing this pawn, and it's going to be faster. Also, you can take here on h6. If white tries to defend h6, then it can still take, right? Because if the bishop takes, then f2. Any other possible moves for white?
Pawn g7.
Yeah, pawn to g7. That's an obvious move to try, right? Because we've trapped the rook. I mean, you gotta look at that, right? So black goes f2. Sorry. Now what?
Take the rook.
Okay, you take the rook, but
I have to check my position.
still about to make a queen, though, right? And white can't get to g8. It's a light square, and he can't. He doesn't have any. He could try king f7, but I'm planning bishop g7 mate. But unfortunately, black queens with check. So. So it's not that. This rook's not going anywhere, though. Does anyone see some idea to set something up?
Bishop e7.
Bishop e7. What's the idea with bishop e7?
Shield on f6.
Yeah, to go to f6. So, well, black has basically one legal move. I mean, well, he has 4 legal moves, right? But you don't gain any advantage by making a different piece. You have to make a queen, right? I mean, nothing else is going to, we'll see that. But okay, so bishop f6 is the idea. Looks bad for black. About to take that rook. Black is unlucky because this pawn here, there's no checks. But suddenly, what do you think black does here? Any ideas? I mean, there's only one move that black can even have any hope.
What if he pins the pawn with the queen?
Pins. Which pawn? Like queen e2 or something? And then white takes the rook anyway and makes a... Oops.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the wrong pieces. I'm trying.
Yeah, you do this, you know. Checkmate. But is there any other move black could play, or he just resigns?
Take the bishop.
Take the bishop. What does white do? What happens? White takes back. What does black do? Looks like a bad position for black, right?
Oh, it's a draw.
It's a stalemate.
It's a draw.
So does black? So does white take back?
No, you can take the rook first, and then
Take the rook. If the king takes, then of course white takes there, no stalemate, and we make a queen. And what's? I mean, okay, the queen takes, right? Black's up a whole queen. So what does white do here? King e7, the queen takes e5, and black was
I'm
up
thinking
d4. So I mean, before we look, you know, and see that this is, because otherwise you could just take and make a draw. But now you're down a queen. But suddenly black is this is what's known as zugzwang, right? Black has no moves. I mean, he has to move, but he has no good moves. So obviously, if black takes the pawn, white wins easily. You know, we're going to promote this pawn to a queen, and black's only hope is to do this, because he can't skip a move. If black could skip a move, everything would be fine. You know, he would have to keep skipping moves after king e7, but white can't push his pawns or it'll let the queen out, right? But he can't skip a move, so only try would be something like this, so that after white takes the queen, black does that. Now what does white do? Because it's a race now. d5, well, let's see what happens after that. Black pushes, obviously, right? We don't need this pawn. d6? Yeah? Yeah.
You have to go for
Well, I mean, white doesn't lose the race, but they're gonna queen at the same time, and then black's gonna have a bunch of checks, so d6, h3, d7, h2, d8, h1, queen f6, and probably black has some, maybe white's winning, but I don't know where the white king is going to go to get out of, maybe white's winning, I don't know, but it was better to start with the more advanced pawn, right?
But the problem is that the king is blocking the...
King is blocking it, but the thing is we're going to queen with check, though, once we move our king out of the way. So they're both going to take the same amount of time to get up there, right? This one's going to take 1, 2, 3, 4 moves. This one's going to take 1, 2, 3. I mean, 3 moves, and then the king's going to have to move, and then 4. The difference is this is with check. The other one, the king's going to be in the way. So that's why we push e6. Black has no choice but to push his pawn, and then we just move out of the way. And white queens with check, and then easily, you know, gets behind the pawn and wins. So that was, yeah. I was going to show this game, which I played long ago. I mean, I could pick all kinds of different games, but I picked this game, which I don't think I've shown, I mean, ever really. This was from 2001 in the World Open. And my opponent was named Greg Braylovsky. He was 2285 FIDE, and he was like 2,400 player US rating. It's different ratings at those times, but so it was the last round, and I began with e4, and he went c5. So who knows what opening is? Sicilian. Okay. So knight f3, knight c6, and I went knight c3. So I don't remember why I chose this move order. It doesn't make a difference. I could go d4. Probably I was trying to avoid something like, I don't know what I was just. I avoid this one. Immediate e5, right? But on the other hand, I allow dragon, if he wanted to. Did I just? Okay. I allow this, which now I don't have c4, so I don't have Maroczy bind if I want to. But okay, I didn't care, whatever. I also allow e5, which is another line, but you know, he keeps me from playing d4, but he weakens some squares d5. But okay, he just chose to go d6, and he wants to go into open Sicilian, and now I don't have any profitable way to avoid playing d4, so I played d4. So both players kind of, you know, I mean, I tried to avoid something, I don't remember what, and he was perfectly happy to go into exactly what I wanted to go into. Takes, knight takes, and he went e6. So who knows what opening this is? I mean, these two pawns on e6 and d6 in an open Sicilian. What's this called? I mean, this is a Scheveningen, basically. This, you know, just with the knight on c6 instead of f6. If we had this knight back here and the other knight on f6, you've seen that before. But it's the same thing. But now g4, Kara's attack doesn't make as much sense because there's no target on f6 to attack with g5. So he's trying to avoid that type of thing. Okay, I just developed my bishop to e3. Okay, he went knight f6, queen to d2. So the idea is I'm about to castle queenside and play f3 and g4 and start pushing pawns. This is a setup which you can use in a lot of openings. This is called the English attack here. It's also against the dragon, somewhat different, but same idea. You castle queenside, you go f3, you go g4, h4, g5, h5, and push those pawns over there. And meanwhile, you keep the center solid enough with f3. Okay. So I'm starting off with this move. Maybe if I went f3 right away, he could do something like d5. So I want, you know, get castled right away. And I wasn't too worried about knight g4. But he played that anyway. Now, knight g4, I think this is a wrong move. But, you know, this was like 13 years ago. And even masters, they made a lot more mistakes early on in the game. There was just a lot less information out there. But here, for instance, better to not play knight. He's trying to exploit the fact that I didn't play f3 early on, but he missed something. He wants to take my bishop, and I don't want to let him take the bishop. It's better for black to just keep developing. Here, for instance, and if f3, you know, you can do this type of thing. Takes, knight here, and it's a complicated game, but okay. So, by the way, ask questions if you have any questions. But he went knight g4, okay? So, I don't want to let him take that bishop. That's an important piece. So I went here. And now, queen is under attack. What does he do here? He went queen b6, and now I went here. And his idea was probably to play this move. What do you think I would do here? Knight a4. Suddenly black's queen is trapped because it can't go back. These squares are covered. And queen a5, well, that results in the queen being traded, and then I'm going to do what here? What do you think I do? Fork the rook and bishop with knight c7, right? Okay, so I did look at knight a4. Obviously, I have to check what happens after this. It kind of intuitively doesn't look right, but the idea is we trade queens. Now his knight's under attack, but so is mine. So this is what I plan. Knight c7, king d7, I take the rook. Well, he has to take my rook. Okay, already you can reject this for black because this knight is trapped and my knight's not really trapped. But now I have also check. He has to go here, and then this, checkmate. Okay, so he saw that he couldn't play a6. And knight a4 is nevertheless a big threat. Whatever he does, knight a4 is going to chase the queen away from guarding c7. So he played S move, queen a5. Okay, the queen moved twice, but maybe my knight will have to be chased back. It's on b5, he's going to go a6, and It's, you know, so that's what he hopes. So, okay, I played this move. I suppose I could, I probably looked at this, but then he gets a big lead in development. The idea is that if he takes this bishop, knight b5, I think I got this idea with check on c7, yeah? Can't stop it because, I mean, even if he makes room for his king to get away, that's mate right now, but if he makes room for his king to get away, I'm still going to take the rook. But I think I didn't like just he plays this move, and my bishop has to move away, and then he starts getting lots of counterplay with you know, this type of thing. I mean, I don't remember how much I went into this, but you know, I was 21 and I just like to attack, you know. I didn't want to grab that pawn, so I wanted to bring more pieces out, and I think I didn't fully look at that knight takes d6 so much, but it probably wasn't right anyway. So I went bishop e2 because I want to get my pieces out. Now I'm threatening the knight on g4. Okay, he goes a6. So what am I going to do here? Should I take his knight and make him take my knight and double the pawns? Is this going to be like, is this going to be bad double, if I take here, is this going to be bad doubled pawns for black?
Because then you can't castle it.
Yeah, now suddenly b4 is coming, and the open a file is actually pretty strong. And the double pawns aren't great, but black has a lot of dynamicism here. So I'm not sure that's a good idea. So of course I retreat my knight, yeah? Oh, okay, I also have this again. But this time queen takes the g5 is hanging, so white would have to take here. This I think I didn't even consider. And this is clearly better for white. I mean, this is a pawn up, right? And black has a little bit of play, but not enough. But I mean, with his queen moving twice, going to a5, and the knight jumping around, I wanted to gain time. So I just did this because I realized his knight's under attack, and I'm about to bring my knight to c4 with tempo. So I didn't want to go grabbing the pawn. Maybe it was a good idea, but you know, I didn't want to do that. I'm about to go knight c4 with tempo, attacking the queen. This is going to be under attack, and this also. Meanwhile, I'm threatening the knight, so you better deal with the knight. So he went here, and now I chase the knight. So this is why I didn't want to grab the pawn. You know, he got some counterplay. This time I get the attack. He went here, knight c4, attacking the queen. He goes there. It looks like it's been going really swimmingly for white so far, but it's not that simple because black has a counter threat, h6. He wants to trap my bishop, and that's not easy to deal with. You know, h6. This bishop is, you know, if it was here, it would be terrible for black, but. Also, he has b5 coming, perhaps, and that's going to attack this and gain time, and then it'll look like my knight moved g1, f3, d4, b5, a3, c4, and now again somewhere maybe. So that he lost a lot of time, but also my knight moved about 5 or 6 times. But still, I have the lead in development. I just have to be consistent here. So I played f5. I have to do this to save my bishop, but I'm giving up the e5 square. So now he's going to get that square for his knight. Okay, I keep developing. Important to castle and get developed. And he did this move. So now now this is where I thought for a while. I don't remember, it was a long time ago. But basically, I think I was a little bit wrong. I mean, I didn't quite understand how much of an advantage I had. Basically, like takes. I didn't like this because takes, you know, he's throwing in a check there, or he could take right away, whatever, and then taking back, and it looks pretty good for black, right? You got pieces out and everything. Still, it's probably actually better for white after knight d5, because black really doesn't have any control of the d4, but white has a d5, and black's best is he's going to have to give up the bishop or something, but still I felt I could do better than that. I don't know if I really looked at that so much. I just didn't want to let his pieces out. I could also consider to not take on e6 and play this, and then I didn't probably like some, you know, this pawn is a real serious problem for black. White's also better there. But what I did was I said, okay, I want to take on e6 and find out how he's going to take back. If he takes with the pawn, then I'll happily take here, because if he takes with this pawn, this is terrible. You know, I'm going to put my bishop somewhere over here, or check first and then come back, and it's an awful position. He's not going to castle. It's just terrible. Meanwhile, if he takes with the bishop, Then I'm going to come here. Now that he's decided, I'm not going to take on e5. I'm instead going to come here, and then I'm going to come into d5 with one of my knights. And that's also terrible for black. So I wanted to play forcing way. Now there's a little issue that my own knight's under attack, but I was willing to sacrifice a piece. So that's what I did, and he surprised me with something I hadn't even considered. He took on c4. He's winning a piece a different way after this. I thought he would take with a pawn, but then the idea was I take, I go here, my knight, queen has to move, and then I just take this pawn back. And I've got 2 pawns for the piece, and his king is stuck in the center with open f-file, the bishop on this diagonal, open d-file, big lead in development, and I think white has a big advantage here. But that's, you know, I mean, I just wanted to play this position. I wasn't thinking so much who's better or whatever. But it looked, I mean, probably you should do that. But so he took on c4. This led a lot of practical problems because it looked like really bad for black. But there was a lot of different possibilities for me. So here, if he takes there, I just go here, and this is not what black wants, right? I mean, he can't castle. This bishop is aimed at a weak point on e6. And it's tough for black. So he does this. Now, what do you think white's going to do here? Black is attacking 2 bishops, right? I got a gigantic lead in development. His king's in the center, but I still have to find... Okay, first I do this, sorry. I mean, knight d5, obviously, right? You attack the queen moves away, but still, 2 bishops under attack. It seems like there should be lots of good moves, but really it's not that simple. What should white do here?
Bishop take f6.
Well, okay, bishop f6. Yeah, we want to sacrifice something, yeah? That's for sure. But probably he takes it. No, what? Knight f6? Yeah, okay. Probably white has a lot of compensation, but it's...
Queen g5.
Queen g5, then you can block. Maybe he could even... yeah, but maybe he could even take that bishop. Okay, queen g7. I suppose something like... something like this. It's not so simple. Maybe also after queen g5, maybe he can do this and allow a discovered check, because there's always bishop e7 to block. I guess. I mean, there's actually a lot of good attacking chances here, but it's. I think. I mean, I was just curious if you're going to guess the way I played, because I think the other ways, well, they're not so clear. At least, you know, they weren't at the time. Maybe there's some other way that's also should be several moves that are good, but what else could white do? Sometimes it's hard to play positions, but it looks so promising. There's lots of different possibilities, but here, you know, black is going to be up a piece, so it's very provocative play for black. But you got to still solve the problem. Yeah? Anyone?
You can get move the knight and get the queen to d5 would be nice.
So where to move the knight to? Yeah, I mean, I'll take the... I mean, you can take on f6, right? That's a pretty natural move. And I think that this is actually technically good for white, but at the time, you know, I thought he takes here, and somehow, you know, and then white takes the rook and black takes there, and I felt that black's going to castle, and he has 2 pieces for the rook. Now, I suppose there's some sort of tactic with this, and I don't know exactly how this all works. It's queen on h, king g8 then? Here, queen e7 takes there. I don't know. It was all kind of fuzzy. Somehow it's good for white. I don't know, but... Huh? Bishop e2, right at the beginning? Bishop e2, okay, I didn't consider that one. Can he take here? Check? That's your idea? G6. It's not as easy as it seems to catch black, you know, and sometimes he can give up his queen too. Rook f7, that probably doesn't have to. I don't know. I mean, it's not an easy position for black. Bishop e2 is a possibility, but also after bishop e2, I mean, maybe he can even just capture the pawn and he's ready to castle already. Check, I guess. Okay, that's good for white, I guess. But yeah, I suppose after bishop e2, somehow we take the bishop and check here. Rook f7. Maybe just take. How many pieces black have? No, that's not enough, yeah? Yeah, that's not enough. Maybe this one then. Is there a good continuation? Knight f6. Knight f6 black can give up the queen now. You can take the knight and then take the queen back. Probably white doesn't have anything. That's two minor pieces and a rook for the queen in this case. That's not enough, I suppose. So bishop e7. Got all kinds of stuff maybe here. We have this move. You know, I mean, it's easy for someone to get away somehow when you're attacking, but if you miss something, you know, who knows what can happen? I don't know what's going on here. But bishop e2 I didn't consider, but that's interesting. What I played was this move. So the idea was, well, if I retreat this bishop simply, it takes rook here. He has enough pieces. Oops, knight e7 is better. I wrote. He has enough pieces guarding e7, but I took with a rook. Now if he just takes this bishop, of course, this time it's different. There's too many pieces on e7, so he has to take the rook after rook f6. That's the take. Now I take there. He has to get out of the check, so he goes there, and I do this check, yeah. And now, if he blocks. What happens if he blocks with a knight? What does white do here? Queen a5, yeah. And then? You know what? It was better than knight c7. I mean, knight c7 is good, but there's even better move. Knight f6, yeah. Checkmate. So he can't block with a knight, so he blocks with the bishop, or if he blocks with the bishop. He didn't block with the bishop either. If he blocks with the bishop, it doesn't look good in general, but I can also take, you know, he has to take, right? Check. And then even, I saw, I think, at the time that I could take e7 and then queen c6 check, if the queen takes. But even better is just to build up, attack, threaten d8, queen d8 mate. Here black's up a rook, but his pieces are so bad, there's no way to do anything. I mean, queen to d8 is threatened, and it's just no mobility at all. He could take the pawn, for instance, but then bishop takes, and it's just black's, you know, about bishop d7, then queen takes e7. There's no way to defend his position. The rooks are sitting at home. You know, he's got material, but he doesn't even have material, actually, because white has 3 pawns for the exchange at this point. But so that wasn't something he could consider. So he had to go to e8. Maybe I think, no, he offered a draw earlier in the opening. But okay, at this point, you know, I wasn't going to take a draw. That wasn't the idea. So instead of repeating positions with knight, for instance, knight f6, king d8, knight d5, that would be a draw. But I just brought the last piece into the attack, rook f1. So I'm down a rook now, and he can take this bishop too. I think that's what he did, yeah? He took the bishop. What would you play here as black? Anyone see any ideas? Actually, it's hard to say, but there's one thing that didn't occur to me during the game that was a very interesting idea. Um, first of all, we've got to see what happens if he just, in the game he took the bishop. We've got to see what happens if he just takes this. Right? Because it's a rook, right? If you take that pawn. So what do you think I do here? Yeah, knight f6. Okay, king f7. Now probably at the time, I just said, okay, I take on e6. Gets to take back, queen d5 check, and okay, discovered checks, all kinds of mayhem is happening here. It's got to be terrible for black. And in fact, I think something like knight g4 check, king f8, and then like rook f7 is crushing. I mean, I didn't calculate this for sure. I just looked at this earlier today, but this is like I definitely just use intuition to say, oh, all these pieces are on black's king, and you can't take the rook because I take here, and then the only move would be this, and then knight f6, right? So, but there's so many other ways to win here, and one of them was also the simplest, the clearest is this, I guess, with the idea that if he takes the knight, it's check, right? If he takes the knight, I take here, and these two bishops are too strong. Then there's check here, and then checkmate. So knight g8, okay, probably I could have found that. And if king e8. Then I take this, which is really holding black's position together even though it hasn't moved, and then take this. And you can just see, like, but during the game, I mean, you don't look at this type of stuff. You just say, okay, all my pieces are attacking him, forget it. If he plays it, I'll figure it out. You don't have time to go find force mate in 10 moves in every single line. You've got to use your intuition, right? If he takes the knight, of course, queen takes e6, king g7 or king f8, bishop h6. So he goes here, you know, and then I take here, and that's just, you know, if he takes the knight, queen e6, and okay, so he took the bishop, but okay, what do you think I do now? I'm down rook and a minor piece, so I have to make attacking moves always. So what do you think? Kind of told you already. Yeah, rook f7, right? So rook f7. So now if the queen moves, knight c7, and if he takes this, then unlike the variation before, the queen's not guarded. So that's a, you know, now instead of two rooks and a minor piece, it's rook and a minor piece for the queen, and I have a huge attack. So that's hopeless. So the queen can't move, knight c7, so he had to block. Okay, what do you think I do here? If I take with a knight, he's going to destroy my whole attacking structure with taking that crucial pawn, which has really been important since the very beginning. That pawn and the knight on d5 were absolutely just fundamental to the whole attack. This would break down the foundation of it. And remember, black's got material to give back, a lot of material to give back. So you got to, when you're attacking, you got to watch out for those type of things, you know. And now, you know, rook's under attack, the knight's under attack, everything. You know, so that's a good idea, but it doesn't quite work. And that's the same thing that would happen if the bishop took. I guess bishop takes e6 as well, right? And then suddenly, you know, there's no. So after bishop e7, what else could I do? Well, remember, black's also got material to give back, and I suppose he could take, right? Take the queen, and now he could throw in a check, or maybe, yeah, probably throw in the check and then take the rook, right? With the bishop, check here to make sure that's safe, and then next move after white gets out of check, you could take here. A lot of pieces for the queen. Remember, it's a queen, but that doesn't mean that if you have, your opponent has two rooks and two minor pieces for it, that you're not just resigning, you know? So that doesn't work. What I have to do? I have to keep sacrificing even more, so I take with the rook. That bishop was a crucial defender. If he takes with the knight, what happens? Check him here. If he goes this way, bishop h6, checkmate, right? So if he goes this way, well, queen a5, he has queen c7 now. The knight's not on d5 anymore, so I take d6. He has to block with the bishop, and now I simply take. And I'm down a rook and the exchange, but the position's hopeless for black because white's pieces are just too active. Again, small amount of force, but pieces, but huge force. You know, knight c5 is a threat. Taking e7 is a threat. A lot of other different threats. You know, I mean, just you can't find a defense here. Looking around, you won't see anything. Mainly knight c5 is the biggest threat, but even despite a huge material advantage for black, there's no way out of this one. So after rook takes e7, okay, he gives up his queen, right? Now I took the queen, and here he's got 2 rooks and a bishop for the queen. But here comes the punchline. I don't take the knight because, I don't take the pawn, which is the natural move, because he goes here, and how am I going to get through this? I mean, maybe there's a way. It looks risk. This pawn's so strong. Maybe I could take and then queen c6, but then king d8, and I don't know. But I saw a forced win, so I took the knight. Surprisingly, I mean that knight. But the idea is, okay, he has to take back because if he doesn't, I'm taking this pawn, and I'll have queen for 2 rooks, but also a ton of pawns, and opposite colored bishops will make my attack too strong because he can't defend on the dark squares. So now what do you think I do? Queen g5, right? Okay, so now he's got a choice, various choices. If he takes here, what do I do here? Queen d5, forking the king and the rook, right? If he goes here, queen f6, and then the rook's under attack, and if the king goes here, it's checkmate. So after this check, there was only one move, king e8, right? Now what do you think I do? Queen h5, yeah. Remember, black's up a lot of material here. I gotta ensure that I'm gonna win something. Queen h5. Again, he's got some choices, but king f8 obviously loses to what? Checkmate, right? Okay. King e7 also allows that same check. Check. Followed by, no, there's no checkmate, but push the pawn, followed by discovered, 2 queens. So the only move is king to d8. Now what do I do? So the point was I forced this king to d8. That's going to be important in a second. So here's what I did. I attacked the rook, queen d5. And you see the reason why I forced this king to d8 instead of going immediately to d5? Because if he goes rook b8, what do I do here? Take the pawn, and now it's check, and I win the rook, right? And if he goes here, which is what happened in the game, because there's no other move, otherwise I take the rook, right? Now what do I do? I could, yeah, I probably should have. I don't know I was probably excited, but taking the pawn would have been fine. But the point is, after king d8, after king e8, what does white do here? Anyway, let's just go back one move, because I didn't do that. I did another move which wins, but I could have done the same thing, but taken the pawn first. I don't know why I didn't do that, but. Do you see black's got 2 unguarded rooks, right? So queen d4, yeah. No, I mean, I might as well have taken the pawn and then gone queen d4. I don't know why I didn't do that, but whatever. Queen d4. And so now one of the rooks is lost. So this was the idea. I mean, give up, first of all, this strong bishop for the knight, but the idea is check. He has, after each move, there's only one move, and I have to throw in this check because otherwise he'd have rook b8 here, and then that. And now I'm going to end up with queen against, you know, two pieces against rook and bishop, and now it was easy, and he didn't resign, but the rest of the game was just, okay, I brought my king up, I guarded that pawn, now I start advancing, guarded f7, start advancing. I don't care if he takes the pawn because king and pawn ending is winning. If he takes on e4, I'll just give up my queen. I start advancing, I push that pawn here, you know, and getting ready to come to g5 at some point, and, or, you know, it was there, he took that pawn, I took this one. Now I attack the bishop and the pawn on d6. Took that. Of course, I could take the rook if I wanted to, and then start pushing pawns. But I didn't. You know, I just did that, and okay, did this one, and you know, he had bishop e4, king f2. There's no perpetual there, so he went back there, and then I did that, and then he resigned because I'm about to take that one. So that was always my favorite game for a long time when I was, you know. So I thought I'd show that, and I just thought it was an entertaining game.